Hello, everybody. My name is Kiril Stoychev, and I am the chairman of the Bulgarian Astrological Association. I have practiced and studied astrology for more than 30 years. Firstly, I would like to thank Baron Jurecic and the Astrological Society of Slovenia for giving me the opportunity to present my work to you. It is a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here with you today. The topic I would like to discuss is about the exaltations of the planets. I will try to tackle some of the unsolved problems with the current system of exaltations used in modern astrology and give you a brand new concept that I have created. Compared to rulership, the exaltation of planets is a very unclear and speculative topic in modern astrology. The concept we are using today has no clear logic or origin, and it seems as if it was just given to us. The conception of exaltation arose for the first time in Babylon. The astrologers in the 7th, 6th century BC have noted that every planet has its own bit inserti, in translation, hidden place. Each hidden place corresponds to a specific constellation. Once a planet was in its hidden place, the corresponding omen or prophecy was most often related to the state affairs. In some of the preserved Babylonian horoscopes from the 4th, 2nd century BC, the term hidden place is used the following way. A person was born in the hidden place of Venus. However, in that person's chart, Venus is not in the constellation of Pisces, nor is the Sun. This applies to all Babylonian horoscopes in which the hidden place was mentioned. This means it is unclear to us why and how the Babylonians used the term Bitnisirti. One of the translators of these ancient Babylonian horoscopes, David Pingree, shares hypotheses that suggest ancient astrologers used this method to describe the position of the moon CZG at the time of conceiving the child. From that, we can conclude that the term exaltation in the horoscopes of the ancients was used in a completely different way compared to the way we use it today as a planet's dignity. Today, we mostly measure the positions of the planets by their ecliptic longitude. However, it is important to note that the planets do not move only in longitude, but also in latitude. They deviate south and north of the ecliptic. Let's see this here in this chart. Here is the planet, and here is the vernal equinox point, 0° Aries, and here is the planet. This is the longitude of the planet, and here is its latitude, northern latitude in this position. And if the planet was here, there will be southern latitude. A planet is at its hidden place when it reaches its farthest point from the ecliptic. At the time of the Babylonians, Venus reached its greatest ecliptic latitude in the constellation of Pisces. This concept is presented for the first time by the Russian astrologer Vladimir Kovygin. The Greeks translate the term Bitnesirti as hypsoma, which means elevation, and in Latin it is translated as exaltio, greatness. When does a planet reach its greatest ecliptic latitude? This occurs when during its motion a planet makes a retrograde knot. Here. But there is a problem. The planet's distance from the ecliptic during their retrograde motion is very small, from 1 to 1.5 degrees for Jupiter to 8 degrees for Venus. This deviation is very hard to observe and calculate. Furthermore, the planets don't reach their greatest ecliptic latitude every year. This is why the astrologers from the 2nd, 1st century BC didn't use their own observations for the exaltations, but instead used the knowledge given to them by the Babylonians. The periods of time in which the planets reach their hidden place, greatest ecliptic latitude, are as follows. Mercury, once every 20 years. Venus, once every 8 years. Mars, once every 15 years. Jupiter, once every 12 years. And Saturn, once every 30 years. For example, on the 3rd of March, 656 BC, Venus has moved 8 degrees north of the ecliptic and is at the 27th degree longitude of the sidereal sign Pisces. Venus will reach again the same position in latitude after 8 years, with a difference of 8 to 15 degrees in the longitude. The interesting thing is that on this date, Venus is at the 27th degree of Pisces, which today is considered to be its exaltation degree in the tropical zodiac. The same can be said about the following dates in which Saturn and Mars were at their hidden places, exaltations. On this date, Saturn is at 21st degree of Libra in the sidereal zodiac. This is the exact same degree of exaltation we use today in the tropical zodiac. On this date, Mars is at the 30th degree of Capricorn in the sidereal zodiac. Today, in the tropical zodiac, we use the 28th degree of Capricorn for the exaltation of Mars. Here is how an ancient Babylonian omen sounds like. If Venus reaches her hidden place, a good fortune will come to pass. She reaches the constellation of the Lion. On the other hand, if she does not reach her hidden place before disappearing, the land will suffer. It is interesting to note that In the ancient Babylonian text, Venus has another hidden place in the sign of Leo. The second hidden place can be explained by the astronomical fact that planets can deviate both north and south of the ecliptic. They have two greatest ecliptic latitudes here on this chart. Above ecliptic, northern latitude in Pisces, and here below ecliptic, southern latitude in Leo. Around the 7th-6th century BC, Venus reached its greatest south ecliptic latitude in the constellation of Leo. That is why in the omen above, Leo is pointed as the hidden place of Venus, not Pisces. This fact has slipped by the astrologers who created the modern exaltation system, or it was just ignored. By analyzing this omen, we come to the conclusion that the Babylonians observed the moment when a planet reached its greatest ecliptic latitude, northern or southern, and used the term hidden place, exaltation, to describe this event. As already mentioned, a planet reaches its greatest ecliptic latitude when it moves retrograde. The retrograde movement of Venus begins when the planet is occidental of the Sun and is located approximately 30 degrees of longitude from the Sun. When Venus is about 8-9 degrees of longitude away from the Sun, it becomes invisible for us, disappearing in the Sun's rays. We have been told the exact same thing by the ancient astrologers in their omen, that if Venus disappears, becomes invisible, before reaching its hidden place, greatest ecliptic latitude, the land will suffer. Let's put ourselves in the place of the Babylonians who observed with naked eye the night sky in the year 656 BC. The date is January 1st. Venus can be observed in the evening in its ultimate brilliance. It has reached its maximum elongation of 46 degrees from the Sun and is located exactly on the ecliptic, 0 degrees latitude. Its velocity is equal to that of the Sun and starts to decrease. Venus is at 3rd degree of the sidereal sign Pisces. February 1st, Venus is now 40 degrees of longitude away from the Sun. In the time between January 1st and February 1st, Venus has moved 4 degrees of latitude above the ecliptic. Its ecliptic longitude for this date is 28 degrees in the sidereal sign Pisces. February 15th. Venus is now stationary, located about 30 degrees of longitude from the Sun, and has risen 6.5 degrees of latitude above the ecliptic. It begins to move retrograde and starts getting closer to the Sun. On March 3rd, Venus reaches its hidden place, 8 degrees ecliptic latitude, and is positioned in the 27th degree of longitude in the sidereal sign Pisces. On the next day, Venus disappears in the Sun's rays. Now I will show you a short animation. Here we can see Venus. This is the ecliptic. The day is January 1st. Here is constellation Pisces. Venus is above the ecliptic, 8 degrees. And at the beginning of March, it disappears in the sun rays here. This ascent of Venus 8 degrees above the ecliptic, which Babylonian astrologers have observed, continues for 2 months in the sign of Pisces, hidden place of Venus. Exaltation of Venus. However, the planets reach their greatest ecliptic latitude in a given period, 8 years for Venus. Also, there is a shift along the ecliptic longitude in which this event can be observed. Shift of the degree of exaltation in longitude. We see that after 4 periods, the degree of exaltation of Venus shift to the next sign, Aquarius. Here's the problem itself. Planets change signs and degrees of longitude in which they reach greatest ecliptic latitude, exaltation. Their hidden places are no longer located in the same signs given to us by the Babylonians. But in astrology today, we continue to use a system of exaltations based on old observations, which are no longer accurate. In a slightly different way stands the question for the exaltation of the sun and moon. Their places of exaltation are not mentioned in the ancient text. The sun don't deviate from the ecliptic. The moon, on the other hand, constantly changes the sign in which it reaches its greatest ecliptic latitude. Their exaltations in Aries and Taurus can be explained using the same method. The interpretation of the sidereal astrologer Cyril Fagan is that the sun is exalted in Aries because after the vernal equinox in Aries, the day becomes longer than the night. In other words, the sun begins to grow in strength. The first crescent moon after the vernal equinox, which marked the start of the new era in ancient Babylon, was often located in the sign Taurus. That is how the exaltations of the sun and moon were determined. However, this is a concept that is related to the tropical zodiac. We see that the concept of the exaltations mixes ideas from both the tropical and the sidereal zodiac. Is this approach for determining the exaltations justifiable? Should we stick to the same signs that were observed more than 2000 years ago by Babylonian astrologers as places where planets are in their greatest northern or southern ecliptic latitude? If we follow the same method which the ancient Babylonian astrologer used, we need to calculate where the current greatest ecliptic latitude for all the planet is. But no one does this. One of the first astronomical observations made by Babylonians in ancient times were related to the exaltations of the planets. Several centuries later, around the 2nd century BC, the astrological concept of rulership was formed, probably in Alexandria, Egypt, and was represented in the so-called horoscope of the world, or Thema Mundi, a symbolic astrological chart for the birth of the earth. After it was determined which planet rules over which sign, the Hellenistic astrologers looked for the other signs in which the planets had dignities. They adopted the Babylonian concept of the exaltations created in the 7th-6th century BC. Today, we continue to use the same exaltations: Sun in Aries, Moon in Taurus, Mercury in Virgo, Venus in Pisces, Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Libra. Let's call it the traditional concept of the exaltations. But, as I said before, the planets no longer reach their greatest ecliptic latitude in the signs we use for their exaltations. Medieval Arab astrologer named Abraham ibn Ezra faced this problem, and on the top of the already existing concept of exaltation, created a new exaltation concept determined by the greatest ecliptic latitude of planets at his time. Despite this conflict between theory and reality today, compared to the ancient times, everyone who uses astrology, for example, knows that Mars is well placed in the sign of Capricorn. The same can be said for Saturn in Libra. When astrology was first formed, the known planets were the two luminaries, the Sun and the Moon, and 5 other planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Every sign was given a ruler. According to Ptolemy, who in his work Tetrabiblos refers to the knowledge of the ancient astrologers, states that the signs Cancer and Leo, which are the closest signs to the zenith, are related to the Sun and Moon. This may be only true for the tropical zodiac because it uses the turning points, tropicals, of the sun. Therefore, the concept of rulership comes from the tropical zodiac. And because the sign of Cancer is feminine in nature, it became the moon's domicile, and Leo, being a masculine sign, became the sun's domicile. We all know that sun rules Leo and the moon rules Cancer. If you look at the chart between Cancer and Leo, we can build an axis that divides the zodiac into two parts. This chart is Tema Mundi. Let's call it the axis of reflection. The half from the side of the sun, Ptolemy calls the solar semicircle, and the other the lunar semicircle. In the so-called horoscope of the world, or Tema Mundi, Mercury rules over Virgo, Venus over Libra, Mars over Scorpio, Jupiter over Sagittarius, and Saturn over Capricorn. The planets, with the exception of luminaries, are ordered according to their velocity, starting from the fastest all the way to the slowest, from Mercury to Saturn. Here is what astrologer Firmicus Maternus says about Tema Mundi in the 4th century AD. The divine wise man thought invented the birth chart of the universe so that it will be an example for astrologers to follow in the charts of men. This was the system of rulership that was used in ancient and medieval times. If this concept of rulership is correct, we can use it for the newly discovered planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto as well. Let's see if this is true. If we follow the same astrological logic, we should put planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto after Saturn here. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, according to their velocity and distance from the Sun. Thus, Uranus becomes the ruler of Aquarius, Neptune of Pisces, and Pluto should be the ruler of Aries, and many modern astrologers do think so. But today it's generally accepted that Pluto rules the sign Scorpio. Which is located on the other half of the axis reflecting Aries. It is clear that this system of rulership is correct It fits in well with the old and new astronomical discoveries. We saw that the concept of exaltation we use today comes from the ancient Babylonian astrologers. It is unreasonable to use the same concept today because the planets change the sign in which they reach their greatest ecliptic latitude. Furthermore, these observations were made using the sidereal zodiac, not the tropical one, currently used in Western astrology. Now, I will bring to your attention a new concept for the exaltations of the planets. When I first came to this idea in 2001, I reasoned as follows. The Sun is exalted in Aries and the Moon in Taurus. If we use the same logic as the ancient astrologers did in Thema Mundi, we can put the planets in order according to their velocity in a similar way as when determining the rulership. The new positions of the planets we get are the following. Mercury in Gemini, Venus in Cancer, Mars in Leo, Jupiter in Virgo, and Saturn in Libra. Using the exaltation of the Sun in Aries and the exaltation of the Moon in Taurus as starting points, we can build a new axis of reflection which is perpendicular to the axis we used for the rulership. The new axis and the old, which divide Cancer and Leo. By reflecting the planets in the other half of the chart, the same way we did for the first axis, we can see that each planet has a second sign of exaltation. Here, Mercury in Gemini and Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Cancer and Venus in Aquarius, and so on. Now we can create a new concept for the exaltations which will be applicable for the tropical zodiac. Exaltations in the lunar semicircle, Moon in Taurus, Mercury in Gemini, the same as its rulership, meaning the planet is very strong in this sign. Venus in Cancer, Mars in Leo, Jupiter in Virgo, and Saturn in Libra. Exaltations in the solar semicircle. Sun in Aries, Mercury in Pisces, Venus in Aquarius, Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Sagittarius, the same as its rulership, meaning the planet is very strong in this sign, and Saturn in Scorpio. We see that the Sun, Moon, Mars, and Saturn are exalted in the same signs as the ones we use today in the traditional concept of exaltation. Moon in Taurus, Sun in Aries, Mars in Capricorn, and Saturn in Libra. This explains why it has survived through the years and we continue to use it today. The old concept of exaltation, because the position of the planets are strong according the traditional concept and the new one. But there are two problems in this new concept. The first one is the position of Mercury and Venus. Today it's assumed that Venus is exalted in Pisces. Also, some modern astrological schools claim that Mercury is exalted in Aquarius. Furthermore, if Mercury is exalted in Pisces, it enters in a contradiction with its detriment, because the opposite sign of Pisces is Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. So, let us apply the principle of yin-yang. The masculine planets are the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. The feminine are Venus and the Moon. Mercury is considered to be a half masculine, half feminine planet. However, if we take into consideration the seventh principle of Hermes and the yin-yang symbolism, we can safely say that every masculine planet has a feminine side and vice versa. When a feminine planet is exalted in a masculine sign, it is easier for its masculine nature to manifest, and when a masculine planet is exalted in a feminine sign, it is easier for its feminine nature to manifest. Let's see what side of Mercury is exalted in Pisces. The feminine side of Mercury, or the feminine side of the mind, is a person's intuition. Let us see if Mercury in Pisces gives a strong intuition. Here are some famous people which have this position in their natal charts. Rudolf Steiner, Paco Rabanne, Edgar Cayce, Dane Rudhyar, James Redfield, Nicolaus Copernicus, and so on. It is undeniable that all these people have a very strong intuition. On the other hand, Mercury in Pisces is in its detriment because Mercury rules Virgo, and Virgo is in opposition with Pisces. This means that Mercury will have a weakness here. This weakness will be directed towards the person's practicality and dexterity, the basic characteristics of Mercury in Virgo. Another interesting thing we see is that Venus is exalted in Aquarius. Venus has a feminine nature, while Aquarius is a masculine sign. Therefore, there will be a conflict between the two principles. It will be easier for the masculine side of Venus to manifest, which will lead to its exaltation in the aspect of friendship. We can say that friendship is the masculine side of Venus. On the other hand, the traditional feminine characteristics that Venus symbolizes will be weakened in the sign of Aquarius. Things like marriage, love, and relationships can be very difficult, especially for women. This position, Venus in Aquarius, makes women very strong and independent, making it harder for them to find a man that meets their expectations. It can also increase a person's attraction to the same sex. Mars in Capricorn. Exaltation of Mars, same as the traditional concept. A masculine planet is exalted in a feminine sign. This will lead to a stronger manifestation of the feminine side of Mars, which is a person's willpower. Jupiter in Sagittarius, a very strong position for Jupiter, rulership and exaltation, double strength. Saturn in Scorpio, exaltation of Saturn here, Scorpio. Increases the feminine nature of Saturn, patience and concentration. Also, here we find a direct similarity between Saturn, Scorpio, and Death. Saturn in Libra, exaltation of Saturn here again. Same for both the traditional concept and the new one. Jupiter in Virgo. This is the second problem we encounter. The planet is exalted in the sign of its detriment because Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, the opposite sign of Virgo. This phenomenon can be explained the following way. In Sagittarius, Jupiter is the sovereign master of knowledge, but in the signs of Pisces and Virgo, its nature and characteristics are divided into two. In Pisces, Jupiter manifests its spiritual aspects of knowledge, religion, philosophy, psychology, and even art. In Virgo, on the other hand, Jupiter is strong in the field of science, physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, and applied arts. In the physical plane, Jupiter will give people born with this position an abundance of luck and wealth. Mars, exaltation in Leo, increases the masculine side of the planet, activity, publicity, domination, and sport. Venus, exaltation in Cancer, increases the feminine side of the planet, love and care for family and home. Mercury, exaltation in Gemini, a very strong position for Mercury, rulership and exaltation, double strength. The Moon, exaltation in Taurus, same for both the traditional concept and the new one. And Sun in Aries, same for both the traditional concept and the new one. Here is the axis. This new concept of exaltation, which I propose to you, gives a better understanding of the planets and their strengths and weaknesses in different signs. It also helps us to explain some astrological paradoxes that have bothered astrologers for a long time. In modern astrology, there is a debate regarding the exaltations of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. There is somewhat of a consensus for Uranus, which is determined to be exalted in Scorpio. If this new concept of the exaltations is correct, that means the newly discovered planets should fit very easily in it, just like they did in the rulership concept. Let us see if this is true. Let us follow the same logical path and put the three newly discovered planets in order according to their velocity. We see that the exaltation of Uranus is in Scorpio. For Neptune is Sagittarius, and for Pluto in Capricorn. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Uranus is exalted in the sign which today is widely accepted for its exaltation, Scorpio. Neptune is in harmony with the energies and characteristics of the sign Sagittarius and fits its exaltation perfectly. Right at this moment, we can very clearly see the power of Pluto's exaltation. From the moment the planet entered Capricorn in 2008, a lot of large-scale events took place. The economic crisis began alongside with a vast consolidation of power and capital. We also see that the second sign in which Pluto is exalted is Leo. Some modern astrological schools use the sign Leo for Pluto's exaltation. For example, when in 1939 Pluto entered Leo, World War II began. Now, let us have a look at Thema Mundi again. This chart combines both the concept of rulership and the concept of exaltation, which I present to you. Here is how. The ascendant of the chart is Cancer. If you use the following correlation between houses and signs, first house Aries, second house Taurus, third house Gemini, fourth house Cancer, fifth house Leo, sixth house Virgo, seventh house Libra. We will see that the planets are in their signs of exaltation. We only need to switch the places of the Sun and Moon because it is more suited for the Sun to be exalted in the first masculine sign of the zodiac. Sun exaltation in Aries, Moon here exaltation Taurus, Mercury in Gemini, Venus in Cancer, Mars in Leo, Jupiter in Virgo, and Saturn in Libra. Conclusion. This new concept of exaltation is encoded or hidden in the Thema Mundi. And something even more interesting. If we take Aries as the ascendant, we see that the midheaven is taken by the sign Capricorn, the sign in which Mars is exalted. With the new concept of exaltation, this rule can be applied to all the planets. Because the places of the Sun and Moon are switched or reflected. When we put Leo on the ascendant, at midheaven we have Taurus, the sign in which the Moon is exalted. Putting Cancer on the ascendant means that midheaven will be taken by the sign in which the Sun is exalted, Aries. If we put on the ascendant the other sign ruled by Mars, Scorpio, at midheaven we have Leo, exaltation of Mars. At the descendant we have Taurus, detriment of Mars. And at Imoncelli we have Aquarius, fall of Mars. If we put the sign Libra on the ascendant, the ruler of Libra is Venus. At midheaven we have the sign Cancer, exaltation of Venus. At the descendant we have Aries, detriment of Venus. And at Imoncelli we have Capricorn, fall of Venus. We can do this for every planet we take the sign ruled by a specific planet and place it on the ascendant of the chart. By looking at the sign of midheaven, descendant, and the Imoncelli, we can see the exaltation, detriment, and fall of the planet. If we take the houses, for example, we all know a planet is very strong when placed in one of the angular houses, especially in the ascendant and midheaven. Now, with this new exaltation concept, I suggest this applies for the essential dignities as well. Thanks to this new concept, we can now discover the following relation between a planet's sign of rulership and its sign of exaltation. When a planet rules rises on the ascendant, at the same time, the sign of the planet's exaltation culminates on the midheaven. Exaltation of planets according to the new concept I presented to you. Aries, exaltation of the Sun. Taurus, Moon. Gemini, Mercury. Cancer, Venus. Leo, Mars. Virgo, Jupiter. Libra, Saturn, Scorpio, Saturn and Uranus, Sagittarius, Jupiter and Neptune, Capricorn, Mars and Pluto, Aquarius, Venus, Pisces, Mercury. Finally, I would like to say that I have been using this new concept in my work for about 20 years, and it has always proven me right. I encourage you to try using it in your own work too, and observe the results it produces for yourself. Thank you all for listening.